Go over all the roles. First, I would like Thomas to explain the role of the grammarian.
The role of the grammarian is to keep track of filler words. As part of that, tonight we have so I will go off if you are willing to have that. If you're not, please tell me before you get up there. And every time you have a filler word, I will click this to help you know that you have a filler word. Also, I'll be keeping track of the uses of the word of the day, which is dissimulate, which means to feign, pretend, dissemble, or play the hypocrite. The example of use that I have here is, we say we want honesty, then we show a preference for people who can dissimulate with conviction.
Thank you, Thomas. Great introduction to the grammarian. Next, we'll have our timer.
It's me.
Timer. All right, John.
So as the role of the timer, I'll be keeping track of the time that each one of you spend.
Thank you. So we'll also have evaluators, and our general evaluator tonight is Maurice.
Oh, yes.
Idea what the evaluator is?
Yes, the role of the general evaluator is to give a summary of the meeting on how it went, if it started on time. And also, I will introduce, as general evaluator, introduce the evaluators, the timer for the timer's report, and the grammarian for the grammarian's report.
Thank you, Maurice, for that introduction. Also, we have a table topics master, and that's going to be myself as well. And during this period of time, I will get up and either ask for volunteers or choose somebody. And as a guest, you can volunteer if you like. You don't have to. But it's an impromptu section, and I'll really call somebody and then give them the topic. They have to come and speak for a few minutes. It's a fun rapid fire speech segment. All right, so that is the agenda for tonight. And I will now have the honor to introduce our first speaker, and that's going to be Mike. He's speaking out of the Competent Communicator Manual, number 5. And this subject or topic for the Competent Communicator's Body Speaks. Thank you, Mike.
And Thomas, if you don't mind, I'll choose against using the clicker this time. Good evening, Toastmasters and honored guests. Everyone has different activities or hobbies that they like to look forward to, what the weekend is for. And for me, it's always been an activity, a physical activity or sport. And really, that comes from having 2 older competitive brothers. You could almost say that it was beaten into me. And so I've tried all sorts. I've gone all the way from rugby, the total disregard for physical pain, all the way to yoga, which is a bit more peaceful, a bit more mindful. I like to take away what I can from each of these activities. There's one activity, however, I believe has the perfect combination of attributes. And that activity is disc golf. Rather, it's called froth by those familiar with the sport. So those unfamiliar, disc golf consists of throwing a frisbee to a basket usually between 100 and 400 feet away. And the objective is to reach the basket in the fewest number of strokes or throws as possible. And this may seem like a daunting task. It oftentimes is quite challenging, but the very simplicity of the sport makes it very attractive to beginners. First off, buying a disc is only $10 or so that you can get at any local sporting goods store, say Dick's. Second, it's free. Playing around is typically as easy as going to your local park or going to a college campus. And all you have to do is jump in there and get going. You don't need to sign up. You don't need a starter as in with golf. And unlike many other sports, the rules are so very easy that after a few rounds, it's quite easy to see a lot of progress already been made. So there's a lot of great feedback already. Given this low barrier of entry, it creates a great, relaxing, and enjoyable environment. As mentioned, a lot of these disc golf courses are on local parks or campuses, so the course itself isn't too different than going on a hike. And many seasoned veterans of disc golf even pack a cooler themselves and make sure to stay hydrated during their round. And with this great, relaxed, and laid-back atmosphere, you find a great variety, a great diversity, and a lot of enthusiasm among the frolfing athletes. And this has created a lot of buzz around the sport. It led to the establishment of the PDGA, the Professional Disc Golfers Association. This fine institution has made frolf athletes' dreams around the world come true, creating different tournaments and different events, and really creating a great buzz around the sport, which leads to the best aspect of disc golf, and this is the glory. The origins of disc golf date back to 708 BC, when the ancient Greeks used to throw the discus in the traditional pentathlon in the Greek Olympics. And it was reestablished when the famous artist Myron sculpted a perfect Greek athlete getting ready to throw the discus into what has become a modern-day frolf throw. And throughout this history, the sport itself has evolved over the centuries. And that's not something that modern-day athletes take lightly. They strive every single day, every single round, to maintain the great responsibility and tradition that comes along with playing frolf, usually by relentless trash talking on the golf course. So, all that being said, everyone has different hobbies. They have different reasons that they do these hobbies, these activities. They get different things from them. Someone who loves the beach loves to immerse themselves in great scenery. Someone who volunteers at a local club loves the community that comes along with it. I find that frolf has this great, unique characteristic of simplicity, environment, and glory, that while not every activity does everything for every single person, it has added value to frolf athletes for centuries, and it has the capability to add so much more. Thank you, Toastmasters and honored guests. This back to Cody.
Great job, Mike. And I've played a little disc golf myself. Poor man's golf, because you're right, it's a very low barrier to entry. Except if you throw your disc in the pond a lot, and it gets a little bit.
It's happened before.
All right, thank you, great speech. Our next speaker is Susan Murphy, and she's doing her first speech tonight, her icebreaker. So let's welcome Susan.
Mr. Toastmaster, honored guests, and fellow Toastmasters, I'm Susan Murphy, and I'm here tonight to give my first speech, the icebreaker speech. I learned in my earliest days of life that my choice of words either won me friends or caused others to want to throttle me. Now, I suppose the latter group was confined mostly to my immediate family, but I have gotten into a couple of skirmishes over Facebook words that I've used before. Maybe my first test of the power of words to win friends and influence people came as I was a 3-year-old. Now, my grandmother, who turned 99 this year, tells me the story that one night she was desperately trying to get the dinner dishes done, and here she was furiously washing the dishes, and 3-year-old Susan brings up the chair to the sink, and I start getting into all her business. Now, I apparently had been her helper just a few times before, so I thought, I need to go ahead and help her tonight. Now, she was so tired that at this point she was just like, Susan, get down off the chair and take it away. But I put my hands on my hips and I said, you were so much fun yesterday. So anyway, that said, I got to help with the dishes, and my grandmother's been telling that story for probably 4 decades. So anyway, with that success under my belt, over time I developed a love for the dramatic, obviously. And that includes music, because I used to play the flute, haven't in a while, and I sang in choirs from the time that I was in middle school through college. I participated in UIL events, newspaper writing in high school, which I never particularly excelled at, surprisingly, since I'm now a writer. But I did do well in headline writing. And then I acted in plays, both amateur and professional. My first paying gig as an actor was the female lead in a Houston Dinner Theater play. And that set into motion me getting an agent and auditioning for commercials for television and industrial videos. Now, I had many more rejections than I had jobs, but I was able to earn a few paychecks from Buick, Ford, and the now defunct do-it-yourself store, Builder Square. Has anyone ever heard of that before? See, I sent it straight into. Anyway, I did that before calling it quits as a mom with young children. Before choosing to stay at home with our children, Jared, who will turn, I don't know if I should say this, John, 32 on Wednesday, and Lindley, who just turned 30 last week. I worked in consumer promotions at Coca-Cola Foods, where I initiated promotional tie-ins between Coca-Cola products and other major manufacturer food products. When our youngest, Lindley, was in her last year of middle school, I decided to get back into the workforce full-time and got a job at Houston PBS as an assistant producer. I wrote scripts, rundowns, ran the teleprompter, produced a few short format stories for broadcast. And after being there about 3 years, I got a position as a writer-editor at a boutique ad agency, and then later was hired by our main client to work in-house as their editor and writer for publications. What I did there, I mainly wrote stories about small business owners and then determined content for all the company's publications. I've worked in 2 Baptist churches overseeing and writing content for their publications and for the web, which I was doing just before we made the move to Mobile last June. So we're coming up on 1 year here in town. Now I'm building my business as a freelance writer. I'm currently working for a real estate developer in the Houston area, and I have a couple of clients that are Baptist churches that I work for. So you can see how important words have been in my life. I've spoken and I've written a lot of them, and I'm not done yet. I'm hoping my words are going to continue to make an impact as a member of Toastmasters. So thank you so much for letting me share my story with you.
Thank you, Susan. Great icebreaker. You did a lot better than I did on the first one. Great job. Always good to hear the icebreaker and get to learn a little bit more about our fellow Toastmasters. Okay, moving on. So this is the table topics portion of the meeting. And like I said, any guests are more than welcome to join in. So first I'll ask for any volunteers who would like to do this. Let me grab my list of questions. Any volunteers?
I'll go ahead.
All right, Mike. So I got a list of like 300, so just pick a number between 1 and 300.
Let's go with number 2.
Number 2, okay. Who do you sometimes compare yourself to?
Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, I am the 3rd boy and, I'm the 3rd out of 4 children. So I've got 2 older brothers and a younger sister. And growing up in somewhat of a competitive household, now that we're older, we're all on each other's team in some respect, but at the same time, there's always a little bit of a dig, pretty playfully whenever we hang out, whenever we're back in family reunions. So back at home, back when we were growing up, it's funny because I always thought that I was a little bit more of a bookworm, kind of better in school, that sort of thing. But now my sister, who's 2 years younger than me, is getting her PhD. I'm like, all right, well, okay. Good for you. Well, of course, I'm so very happy. I'm so very happy for it. I mean, it's funny. It's funny to joke about this, but honestly, I'm so happy for it. And one of my brothers is also getting his PhD, so I'm doing absolutely fine on my own. Don't get me wrong. But it's funny how it seems like it almost came out of nowhere that they're doing absolutely great. So sometimes we compare, but it's all in good fun. We're all on each other's team, so it's all good. Take the topics.
Mike, handle that one well. Any other volunteers? All right.
257.
All right.
Your lucky number.
257.
It's a woman.
How would you spend your ideal day?
A day in the life. I woke up, got out of bed, ran a comb across my head. Most days start out pretty much the same. Most of us, we have some kind of routine that subconsciously we follow every morning when we wake up. And I'm sure I'm not much different from anybody else as far as that's concerned. But once you get into the meat of the day, there's always something different. So my ideal day would be having things happen that I have never experienced before. Preferably good things happen that I have never experienced before. You see, I'm kind of I like to think of myself as an adventurous person. Now, if I had an ideal period of time, I think that the thing that I would love to do the most is I would like to sail around the world, whether in power or by sail, whatever, and not necessarily alone, but I would like to sail around the world, go around both the southern horn of Africa and the Cape in South America. That way I would be able to get my little blue star tattoo stating that I am a master navigator.
Sounds like a good day. So, any other volunteers? All right, yeah, go. What's your number?
7.
All right. Number 7. Do you ask enough questions, or do you settle for what you know?
Thanks, Chris. Oh boy, this is a question that I have to think about on a regular basis with my environmental work, because the environment is something I believe that no human being probably can ever truly understand, just because there's so many factors at play when it comes to the environment. If you change one thing about, I don't know, how we introduce substances into our streams, what kind of cascading impacts that has on the local wildlife in that ecosystem stream or on the fish in that space. We have a frequent problem of mercury contamination here in Alabama and along any coastal communities. So the original question was if I'm okay with continuing to ask questions or if I should settle with what I know. And I would say that in order to be a successful scientist, like what I'm trying to be one day, I have to continuously be asking myself, is this observation reproducible? Can I see it again? Is there a good way for me to establish causality between observation X and observation Y? And I think it's important to be confident in your observations in that way and assert when you see certain patterns, but also be open to questioning those patterns in the future, because believe me, if you are a scientist who is worth your salt, you have to be open to criticism from other scientists in your expertise and in your speciality. So it needs to be a good, healthy balance of both being confident in the research that you do, but also being willing to take criticism and identify when that criticism really can make your research shine and be a better product. So that's how I would answer this question. Thanks, Cody.
Great answer. We still got plenty of time for some more if anybody would like to volunteer. All right, Marie, what's your number?
Number 134.
134, all right. What's the difference between settling for things and accepting the way things are?
Mr. Topic Master, fellow Toastmasters, honored guest. The question that is posed to me, what is the difference between settling for something and accepting the way things are? I would frame that in the realm of something that's not under my control. If I can control it, then I don't have to settle for it. If it's something that I can't control, wait a minute, that question sounds like, it sounds like the answer is the same, but it might be slightly different. There might be differences in it, but it sounds like the answer is the same. But it depends on if it's something that I can control or can't control, Mr. Topic Master.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, I didn't really understand that question either. Yeah, we have room. Time for maybe a few more. Thomas, all right. Pick a number.
42. Are you good?
No, I'm just kidding. You just really like clicking these buttons.
What is the most desirable trait another person can possess?
Clicking.
Thomas.
I didn't.
Fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, I can pose the question, what is the most desirable trait a person can possess? I'm married, so I can actually use a very good point of reference here. As Cody's engaged, he probably has a really good point of reference as well. The greatest thing a person can possess, characteristic, is the ability to understand someone in spite of how bad they are at communicating. My wife has this gift. Last Wednesday, we celebrated 10 years of marriage. We probably would not have made it past the first 3 did she not have this gift. I have been in my family now for 33 years, and I am still the most offensive one in the family because I have a very good way of putting my foot in my mouth and generally stepping in it and pissing someone off. Because of that, it's really great when you have somebody who can understand you when you're bad at communicating. And so I would say that's the greatest characteristic that someone can possess.
Congratulations, by the way. 10 years.
Yeah, congratulations.
Anybody want to, any guests want to give it a try?
Sure.
Is it the first time? So if you do it, I'll do it.
All right.
Colin.
Pick like a number.
85.
What do you have that you cannot live without?
Good evening, everyone. This is my first meeting, but I think the one thing that I cannot live without is having a sense of curiosity and questioning, and being and wanting to ask questions about things I observe in the world. And I've always been someone who wants to learn more about different things, and sometimes that's a bad thing. I changed my major 8 times in college because I wanted to be everything from a history teacher to a doctor, and I ended up ended up studying political science, which is unlike either of those two first things. So I took an extra year in college, but I think that's okay because I still like to question things. Thank you.
Great job. Takes a lot of guts to get up there.
Skills. I like talking, but I don't want to stand up there. Yeah, I'm gonna try.
Okay, pick a
Oh
number.
gosh, I don't know, just pick one for me.
All right.
47.
47. Okay.
Is it a good one? If it's not a good one,
Yeah,
They're all good ones.
What has life taught you recently?
oh, that's a good one. Thank you. Well, again, this is my first time being here, so thank you for having me. My name is Jenny Hudspeth. I've been posed with the question, what has life taught me recently? I think I would say that over the past probably 5 years just working in the business world, I've learned that integrity is probably the most important thing that you have. All you have is your word, and the ability to learn and the ability to build yourself and to build your character is super important. I think integrity falls in that window. I think that what I've learned is integrity is important. I mean, ultimately, all you have is what you have, and all you have is your word, and people will take you for. I don't know. I'm done. I tried.
You're good. And it gets
It gets easier.
Yeah, we see each other.
I was up there for 10 seconds.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's like I know what I want to say. I can say it sitting here, but when I'm standing there, that's not my
takes
favorite
getting up
thing.
here and practice. All it is.
I don't feel like it gets better.
All right, that's going to end our portion of the table topics, and I really appreciate the two guests for getting up here, and everybody else did a great job as well. So now we're going to move into the evaluation period of the meeting, where we're going to have evaluations of the first two speeches. So I will now introduce our general evaluator for tonight, which is Maurice.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. For the general evaluation, the meeting started on time. We have at least 3 guests tonight. We had 2 good speeches, one icebreaker and one project number 5. We took care of business, probably took care of business. We will not have a meeting next Monday, which is Memorial Day. And we still have officers to nominate for the next year. So at this time, I will introduce the first evaluator, and he's going to evaluate Mike's speech. And that evaluator is Diego.
Thanks, Maurice. Fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, I've had the great privilege and opportunity to evaluate Mike's next speech. I'm sure he must be getting fed up with all the feedback that I keep giving him because I think I've been evaluating his other 3 speeches before this one.
That's true.
Oh, okay, I'm on the money this time. So this particular speech, I think, was a really enjoyable opportunity for Mike to flex his body language skills as well as his public speaking skills. I think probably the two moments in this speech I think that really demonstrated his capacity for body language was when he was leading up to the introduction of disc golf. He demonstrated very, very astutely with his hands yoga on one end of the spectrum and rugby on the other end of the spectrum. And I think it was a really nice touch when you paused for a moment, you looked at everyone in the eye and pointed with your finger before you said, disc golf is the thing that I'm now interested in. I think the other cool body language opportunity that he did was, and I don't have the physique as him, so I can't hold a candle to what he did, but when he posed very, very passionately the discus athlete symbol. So I think those were the two most important points that really demonstrated keeping a good a good welcoming tone with his body language. But there was one moment where that consistency broke, and that was, I think, in the moment when he had to pause to remember what he was going to say next, and there was one brief moment of a grimace in his face. And the fact that 90% of the presentation he was smiling and very lively and in a very blissful state really made that grimace very contrasting and really stood out for someone like me who's trying to evaluate this speech. I think another strong point was you did a good job of focusing one at a time at some people, but then also having using your eyes and doing a nice broad sweep across the entire room. So there was a very nice diversity in the eye contact. Let's see here. I think the final area of improvement that I want to share with Mike is that I noticed he tended to sway back and forth on his feet, which I think kind of took a little bit away from the poise from the speech. So I think if you can try and keep track next time of if you have this tendency of swaying back and forth and changing the center of your gravity, I think being aware of that for your next speech will really continue to add more meaning and significance and poise in your next speeches. So that's how I'm going to end this evaluation. Thank you.
At this time, we'll have the second evaluation, and he's evaluating Susan's icebreaker speech. The second evaluator will be Lawrence.
I'm definitely not going to dissimulate on this speech. Now, one of the things that I would like to make clear is that the first time that we get up and give a talk is very difficult for many, many people. There is a saying in the world that if you go to a funeral, most people would rather be the guy in the box than the guy up there talking about it. So this is not an unusual thing. So I was really impressed by how well Susan was able to get up and really give a good talk, very clear, gave a good response to the crowd and to vocal variety and so on. Thank you. Now, what were the strong points? Again, I think good vocal ability, good vocal variety. How well did the audience get to know her? Very well. She went through a lot of her history in a very quick time. Did the speech reflect adequate preparation? Yes, a whole lifetime of preparation, right? Did the speaker talk clearly and audibly? Yes, he did. Did the speech have a definite opening, body, and conclusion? I think the opening was good for an icebreaker because you are introducing yourself, but I think you could have been stronger in your conclusion. Something we can work on. What was the use of notes? I didn't notice that she used much notes at all. What could the speaker have done differently that would have improved the speech? I think she could have had some more controlled body language. And she was not using a whole lot of body language. She was giving a talk and she was using her arms and her hands to give some body language, but she could have used more. You'll learn that further on in the program. And what did I like? Again, very clear, very expressive, and she put her points across in a way that we could all understand. So I really appreciated it, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Lawrence. Not to dissimulate from the flow of the program, I'd like to introduce John to give the timers report.
Thank you, Maurice. Can I do it from here? Or do I need to do it there?
No, you can do it from where you're sitting.
Okay. We started on time, and it took 5 minutes and 13 seconds to get going after we got through with club business. Let's see. Thomas took the podium and you spent 2 minutes and 52 seconds before you introduced Mike for the first speaker. Mike, you took 5 minutes and 1 second. Where'd you go? 5 minutes and 1 second. To introduce the second speaker, Cody, you took 16 seconds. Susan, 4 minutes and 53 seconds on your speech. Getting into the table topics, Cody, you spent anywhere from 15 seconds to 41 seconds introducing each guest, kind of varied between them. And the general evaluator, Maurice, you took 52 seconds to introduce Diego. Diego, you spent 3 minutes and 2 seconds evaluating Mike's speech. Lawrence, you spent 2 minutes and 37 seconds evaluating Susan's speech. And let me get through the table topics. I skipped over that for a second. Mike, you spent 1 minute and 21 seconds on your table topic. Lawrence, 1 minute 45 seconds. Diego, 1 minute 56. Maurice, 1 minute and 5. Thomas, 1 minute and 24. Colin, 1 minute and 3. Jenny, 1 minute and 6. And that pretty much sums up, for the most part.
Thank you, John. At this time, we will have the grammarian's report by Thomas.
For the word of the day, there were only 2 uses. One I'm 100% sure was right, and that was Lawrence when he used it at the beginning of his evaluation. And he was using it as he's not going to play the hypocrite. Somebody who's feigning it. Then Maurice used it, using a very similar style of it, for filler words. Cody as Toastmaster and Table Topics Master is still relying on OK and so. I lost count of how many times. But he was up there a lot, so we're cutting him some slack. Mike, your crutch word is and.
Okay.
But the bigger problem, now you've actually been eliminated from that one. So the bigger problem now is your stutter starts.
Okay.
You'll start a phrase, and then you'll start it again, and actually finish the second time. The stutter starts happen 7 times in your speech.
Okay.
Susan, you are equally on and stutter starts, all happen 3 times in your speech. Diego, stutter starts are your problem now, as they are mine. You had 6 in your evaluation and 5 in your table topics.
Okay.
Lawrence, in your evaluation, you had 4 uhs. Mike, in your table topics, you had 3 more stutter starts. Lawrence, you had 2 more uhs in your table topic and 1 stutter start. Maurice, you had 1 stutter start in your table topic. Colin, for your first time up there, you did amazingly well. You only stutter started 5 times, which you're hearing these numbers of well-practiced people, and they're up there with you, so that was amazing. And Jenny, I will say, is the superstar for the night. Up there for a minute with having never done this before. She only said the word twice, and she only stutter started once.
Okay.
Thank you, Thomas. At this time, I will relinquish the lectern back to the Toastmaster.
You go to education. Okay.
Yes.
Now we will have the educational overview led by Lawrence, and it's going to be Pathways.
Yep.
And he's going to go over some more of the Pathways program, which is our new online competent communicators. All the speeches will be led for this program.
See if it'll come up. It's supposed to come up. Okay.
Unknown. That's what you're looking
Unknown.
That's the source of
Okay, is it going to do it? Is it? No signal. Where's my source? Anyways, has anyone been into the Pathways program and tried to get in?
I did the test.
You just did the assessment. Did you get did you take a path?
That's like my path.
Did you get into it?
It said it had to wait 30 minutes, and I never went back into it.
Okay. Did you, what was your experience?
Seems it's pretty trying to hold that word. Pretty straightforward, and it gives you a nice little introduction into what your first task is. Obviously, I haven't done my first task, so I can't say what task 2 is like. But it does give a nice little intro and even an evaluation of where you think you stand.
Okay. So you have picked your first path, you actually went in and looked at it. Okay, and you went in and you had the same issue, you had to wait and didn't,
Yeah,
and then now you can get in.
I can get in now.
So we talked it, and who else was it?
I just took the assessment maybe 30 minutes, about an hour ago, and it gave me a 30-minute time slot, and I haven't looked at it since.
Okay. So, Pathways is our new for the new people. The reason that we're going through this is Pathways is a new education program that has just rolled out in our area. And this program is going to combine leadership and communication into one path. So that rather than in the old system, we had a communication book and we had a book on leadership. But now we've got them both combined. So it makes it, in one sense, easier to do the leadership program. Before, you had kind of looked through and said, oh, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. But this one, it all becomes part of the same thing. But what the goal is to develop a program that is going to help you to achieve whatever it is that you came to Toastmasters for. Because we all came here for something. And we might actually leave here with something more, hopefully, than we expected. But we all came here for a reason, and so if we can find a path that will easily take us there, that's what we want to do. Now, for those of you who have not done it yet, I'm going to give you a quick refresher on how to get into Pathways. So what you want to do is, first of all, you want to log into Toastmasters website. And you'll come in here, whoops, and you're in. Now, the next step is you're going to go into the Pathways program by clicking here, and then it's going to give you a list of things that you can do. Now, if you have never been in here before, you'll want to take the assessment, because that's going to go through a survey that's going to help you to decide what is the best path for you to take. Now, it will give you 3 possibilities. You can choose those, or you can skip those and go to do anything else you want to do. So there is 10 paths right now, and I think that they said there are 3 more that are in the works, and hopefully will be out before the end of the year. I'm looking forward to humor. That's the one I want to do. But once you have signed in, you can go to Base Camp. Now, when you go to Base Camp, this is the beginning area for you to get into if you want to start your program, your path. So you've already decided on a path. In this case, I'm part of Hilltoppers Club, so that's what it's going to give me. Now, if I click on log in as a member, it's going to take me to my personal homepage, where I have the ability to move around. Now, a better option for some people will be to go into the Navigator. Now, the Navigator is an online magazine that I'm hoping is going to come up here properly. And so we got to click that.
I think you might have to click that. Issues with my inside.
I'm going to allow it to pop up. You allow OBS Flash to run on this site. I'll remember that and allow it. Okay, so what it's going to do is Navigator is an online magazine. It is also can be got in a soft cover format. Now you can go through this, and it's going to give you instructions on how to do different things. You can, if you go into the menu, you will see what are the different things that you want to do. So it's basically a guidebook to help you to understand what is in Pathways and how you can access that through the base camp. Okay, so for instance, we were talking about club meeting roles today. So we can go in there, and when it opens up in there, if it's going to, I'm hoping it is, yes. Well, it goes in and it starts talking about what are the club meeting roles and where can you go to find more information about that. Now there's a lot of tutorials and various different things. So for instance, I think there's a tutorial on there that's going to be a video. But it does go through, it tells you what they are, it tells you how to fit into all the different roles that you would be in a club. And by clicking on any of those, you're going to get in there and understand the different things that you can do. And then, of course, at the bottom of the page, it always has other stuff. But basically, any one of these roles you can find out about through the Navigator. Okay, you can go into Toastmaster Wears Very Many Hats, which is a virtual copy of a actual physical paper that gives you that information. So those things are available through there. Then again, if you want to go into your path, you log in as into Pathways, and that's going to take you to Base Camp. And once you get into Base Camp, you will be able to go down and look at the various different things that you want to do. Now, because I'm a Pathways guide, I have a whole list of things that I can do. But accessing my path, so I've already picked my path, so I can come in here and launch my path, and it will come up and load all the information. Now, remember, you have to disable pop-up blockers in the Toastmasters website to make this work. You do not need to disable the pop-up blockers on your entire system, just for this website. Okay, so here I can go in to access my path, and it's going to go in.
This is the Base Camp homepage. To access your path from here, open your education
so
transcript.
it's just telling me how
For this
to go
page,
through
select
and do
My
that.
Education Transcript.
Again, it's
Either
going
the
to
My
give you.
Education-
It's going to give you the various different information on how to do the things that you want to do. So by going in and watching that video, you'll be able to see how to get to your path, how to access the information, how to access the evaluation forms that you want to use in the Toastmasters meeting, whether you have somebody do it on your computer or do it on an actual piece of paper and then you can put it on yourself, or scan it and keep it, or just throw it away, whatever you want to do with it. But just the fact that you have done it, the Vice President of Education will log in that you've done it, and then you will be able to move on to the next portion of your path. Are there any questions about this? Yes, ma'am.
For instance, tonight, having done my speech and you evaluated it in my book, how does one transfer that over to Pathways?
Okay, what you need to do, you will need to log in, get on Pathways, and choose your path. Once you have done that, go through and do your self-evaluation, which is the first project for everyone in every path. You determine what is your level of expertise from your own opinion. And then once you've done that, it'll give you the information about how to do your icebreaker, and you can look at that information and see how that worked with you. It might be different than what's in your book, but not by a whole lot. And then once you have done that, if you let me know, I will go in and do your assessment for you. You can actually email me a link, and I'll do it online and give it back. I took a picture of your evaluation so that I can do that. Then once you do that, you have to go back and do the second self-assessment of how you felt after that speech, and then your VPE, or which will be me in a couple of months, another month it'll be me probably, but when the VPE, the Vice President of Education, will go in there and confirm with Toastmasters that you have completed that, and then it will open up for you. They've got it set up so until you do the icebreaker speech, you can't do anything else in your path. But as soon as you get done with the icebreaker speech, much more of the path will open up. You can look ahead. You can't go too far ahead, but you can look up and see what's coming. Are there any other questions about, and any of the new people that have questions about anything, I'm more than willing to answer those also. But it's a very good program. I'm really looking forward to working in that program and seeing how far it's going to take me in my path. And I hope that it will take you in the path that you want to go also.
Lawrence, I have a question.
I got an answer, I hope.
So, if these paths do not have like an analog, book for people to conduct evaluations on, like I was able to evaluate Mike's speech because I had his book. But if this is in electronic format, how do we have membership here evaluate a speech that I give through electronic means?
There are two, actually a couple methods you can do this. First of all, you could conceivably print out your evaluation form and physically have them physically evaluate you, and then you can take it home, or the VPE can take it home. Somebody can put it online if they want, if you want that to happen. And then that becomes a permanent part of your records. But you are the only one that will ever have access to those records. It's not something that somebody else can get in and say, oh, I want to see what he did. But it does give you the opportunity to keep those on file in one of the other pieces that I shouldn't have shut it down. But there's another section in there that says your accomplishments. And you can keep those evaluations in there so that you can go back and look at them to compare. And there is actually, in a couple of your programs, they have a situation where you give a speech and you get it evaluated by some person. Then you go back and you redo that speech and then have it evaluated by the same person again. And by doing that, you can compare, how did you do the first time, how did you do the second time, what have you improved? So there's a lot of possibility there. Now the second method is you just bring a laptop, you give it to them, let them type in the information as they're doing it, or you can email them the evaluation. They can use their own system to type it in and email it back to you. So there's different ways that you can do that, but they have made it more online and more social. So also another valuable thing, in my opinion, is theoretically you could have everyone in the club give you an evaluation on a speech. Even though one person gets up here and gives the evaluation in the meeting, everybody else in the meeting could also evaluate it. And that would be extremely valuable if, for instance, you were doing your doctoral thesis or something and you had to give a presentation on it and you wanted to have a lot of input on how you could improve that, then you could have numerous people give you an evaluation on your presentation to the club, and then that way you would have a good opportunity to really knock it out of the park.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on that? All right, thank you very much, and I hope that we have a good evening. Is it Mr. President or Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much for the educational overview on pathways. Run a little short on time, so now we'll relinquish the lecture and back to our president to end the meeting.
So there are no awards tonight. However, there will be awards probably the next time we meet. One of our distinguished Toastmasters has achieved 2 awards, and hopefully we'll be receiving that next time we meet. We're not going to do an overview of next week's agenda because there is no next week. However, go on to Easy Speak, volunteer for roles for the 4th, I believe it is.
June 4th, yeah.
Yeah, for the June 4th meeting, go on to Easy Speak, volunteer for roles, sign up for speeches if you want. So that's how we're going to do the overview for the agenda for 2 weeks from now. Time readings adjourned.